Hi, Will.
What's up, Josh?
Thanks so much for being a part of this. Kind of, our story started with an article that I saw in Columbus Monthly, I think in like 2022, about your sobriety and the pandemic and music writing, and we kind of put a pin in when this chat would happen. And I'm glad that it's taking place now because I think even the way that I talk about my sobriety is different than the way I would have when we first had the idea to get together. And then you've obviously been busy putting together a bunch of projects and stuff like that. I'm really interested to just kind of like see where your head's at and how you're living right now.
Yeah, it's great to finally talk to you, Josh. I remember you reached out in 2022 when my band Caracara, we were just doing a lot with our record, our second album. We were touring a lot, and I had relatively recently moved to California. It was like I guess like had like about 2 years sober at that point, I guess. And was just like speaking about it a lot for the first time. I talked to Columbus Monthly and a few other like music critics and stuff just about the record, and because that's what I had been writing about for so long, even before I got sober. Like I was sort of hindsight's 2020. I can see this now, but I was very clearly writing about the need to do so. Um, and and yeah, so in 2022 was like the first time I was speaking about it in any public capacity since I may have mentioned this in that article you had seen, but I decided to quit drinking on January 5th of 2020. And I really feel almost like I got like a cheat code or something, because like the pandemic, for me, it prevented me from doing like the number one thing that I most positively associated with alcohol. Like when I stopped drinking, the thing I was most afraid to lose was like drinking while playing live music, drinking with my band, drinking with my friends at shows. And yeah, the fact that everything kind of closed down and made it so I couldn't do that even if I wanted to. I feel like, yeah, I felt in 2022, all that to say, like when you reached out, I felt almost like, I had 2 years, but did I have 2 years? Because we were just starting to tour. I was just starting to dip back into like that space where I really did want to kind of re-engage in that lifestyle.
And what was that like? I feel like that could have been something to easily like jump back into old lifestyle pathways and kind of like, put yourself right back in what could be a rut. What did it feel like to jump into that and kind of have like your newfound perspective on it?
I think I think it was crucial that I had the amount of time I did, where I was kind of forced to be away from the lifestyle entirely. It's really hard to say what it would have kind of been like if it would have been, like 6 months or something. Um, but one thing in particular that happened to me when I stopped drinking is I lost quite a lot of weight, like pretty quickly, without extra exercise or changing my diet really. And but that like that was like over the course of the first year, and I feel like having the time to just see that happen, see like the visual impact that was being had on my body by the amount that I was consuming. Um, that also kind of was very encouraging, and I think that going into tour, having already seen that, it was like, okay, you know it's more than just like there's more than just like mental reasons that you've rethought this. It's not just because it was making you super depressed and super anxious and super hungover all the time. It's like it was literally building up on you. Um and and then I was very lucky. Like all of my bandmates, and then all of my friends in the music scene, like, and then coincidentally, kind of every band we ended up going on tour with, everyone was like so cool and so supportive. There was usually at least another sober person on the tour package. Um, and what I found pretty quickly was that like it's definitely different. Um, I it it's a totally different experience being on tour, but I feel much more able to like deliver the music I want to deliver every night. Like I feel like my voice gets better over the course of a month long tour. Like it gets a little raspy, but it sounds cooler, and I just feel like stronger with it. Whereas like tour when I was drinking, like off days were crucial if I was gonna even sing at every show. And it just feels like good to have that extra confidence, like to know that I'm in much better shape. I can just sing better for longer. Like we're playing better than we ever have when we do go on tour. And the social aspect of it all is just it's just different. It's a little harder for me to like ease in with a new crew. Like bands that we've supported on tour, I think it takes me like maybe a couple extra days to become buddies with everyone, because that's just like a big thing that I did always use alcohol for, is like a social lubricant for sure. But yeah, I think overall, overwhelmingly, like it's been just reaffirmed as a positive choice. And the aspects of tour in particular that I miss most from combining drinking and tour are like far and away, you know, not where the trade-off is so clear. Like it's one of the spaces in my life where the trade-off is the most obvious, and it's cool.
That's super refreshing to hear. What did you notice, creativity wise, cause you're still writing. It's interesting to hear you talk about like you were writing for kind of like a future self that maybe wasn't even there yet, and kind of rehearing your own words in a different light. Did you find a change to the approach of, how you are creative, how you do write? Do the words sound different even still?
Um, yeah, I think I'm really like still that's still evolving, like with everything I've been working on more recently. I think that the work I've done with Caracara, like lyrically, has always been very autobiographical. It's been very kind of like, not so straightforward of like narrative storytelling or anything. We haven't done like a concept album, but there is a sort of narrative arc for me of like both the records and even the EP. And I think that part of what I'm trying to embrace with the new project, but this is also kind of a symptom of of time passing with the band, and also just like me figuring out what my creative lens is now, I guess. Like with the new project, Buying Fireworks in Indiana, I'm going to be working with a lot of like collaborators and a lot of featured vocalists, because I feel like in the years since I quit drinking, I'm still figuring out what I do lyrically. So much of like my lyrical lens, like what I feel most inspired by, what I feel most like excited to write songs about, like lyrically specifically, is kind of like the wild night out kind of song, the dark version of that, the light version of that, all versions of that. That's a narrative arc that's like always been very romantic to me. I just even long before I started drinking, I always really, I like I like all the guys. I like Hemingway, I like Bukowski, all the troubled male role models. And that sort of that sort of narrative is just something that I've utilized, and that it was very first person for a long time, because it was real for me. It was like what I was also doing all the time. And I now am, sometimes I'm enjoying like writing in a more like fictional way, or I'm writing in a more sort of less tethered to narrative, like poetic way when I am writing lyrics. But I'm also trying to embrace like collaboration with other vocalists, because I find that like I'm, as I think like many writers would say, I'm like extremely hard on myself, and I will really like overwrite a song and then over edit it back down to like almost nothing, and then do that a lot of times. And I can be pretty wordy and pretty elaborate and metaphorical. I can geek out hard on things that almost no one will ever notice, and just be happy they're there. But also I find that as a listener, I'm like very into lyricists that can deliver a super powerful lyric or message idea in a super tight, concise way. And I've always had trouble with that. And so I have a handful of so many talented people that I've worked with over the years, or no, that not that I've worked with over the years, that I've met over the years through touring, through playing shows. And I've always thought to myself, like, I would love to have a reason to work with these people, but when is that going to happen? And it's only been the last couple years where I've felt like I had the idea and then the bandwidth for this project to pull it off, because it's like a lot of irons in the fire at once. But so yeah, just trying to embrace new ways of thinking about storytelling myself, but also working with other people, and just realizing that like what I love to do is like making music and hanging out with musicians and traveling to do that. And like regardless of what the final, who the credits are on the final MP3, like I want to still be involved in that. And so the collaboration is where a lot of that is coming from now.
What else is happening within this project? It seems to be a lot of writing, a lot of collaboration. What is feeding that, and what do you hope it grows into?
Yeah, I am basically just, after all these years, like this doesn't represent like the slowing down of Caracara or Steady Hands or any of the bands that that I'm involved with. It's more me sort of trying to rethink like the economics of what it means to be a musician, and what a sustainable career can look like, independent of virality, independent of having fans that you can't interact with or talk to because algorithms are standing in your way. And just like the value through Caracara, I've seen and I've learned so much about the value of having like, if you have 5,000 fans that like really care about what you're doing, that's such a unbelievable privilege to have that. That's so much more than I ever could have expected or asked for from art, and just the way that our current our current system is set up, that's like a number that is not something to be excited about. And I'm just trying to create a new sort of architecture, a new sort of kind of digital community space around music that allows for a smaller community of engaged fans to be enough to perpetuate the project and to keep it going. So what I'm trying to do is I'm producing basically like singles to start, definitely working towards an LP at some point, but for now I'm just focused on like one song at a time. Some of the vocals are me. The first single is me and my wife singing on it. And, going forward, working with a lot of featured vocalists. I'm working on a song with the artist Chai Tulani here in Chicago I'm working on a song with Devin from the band Delta Sleep. He lives in Rome, and I'll be traveling to Rome this summer to like work with him, and also hopefully meet some other collaborators in Rome, explore the scene there, and I'll be documenting all of this stuff. I'm carrying around a camera with me now. We'll be doing like a bunch of stuff over on YouTube, and then there's a newsletter component, which is I built out a website for a little community space and a premium tiered newsletter to share some of my like narrative writing, reflective stuff, and just documenting the whole process, all the travel, everything will be over there. And the idea is that through that tiered newsletter, which is something that you can support if you want to read the essays, or if you're more into just listening to the music and you want to get like exclusive previews to the process, like all the paid subscribers get to hear the single a week early, or if you're just down to like be a patron of the arts and you're not interested in any of it, there's a platform for you to just do that. And that can be like a one-time thing, that can be a monthly thing, that can be an annual thing, but it's just an avenue for the people who are really serious to kind of show the support. And it is a sort of framework that allows me to do this full time way earlier with way fewer people involved. Yeah, that's what I hope it can turn into, a self perpetuation machine, but got to see how it goes. Haven't started rolling anything out yet. So,
I dig it. You sent me some early links, and I like the timeline that I put them in. I read the 2 essays that are on the site first, and then I followed that up with the single. And I loved the sound of the single, especially coming off, because I think I read them in reverse order. The last essay that I read was kind of like the namesake of buying fireworks in Indiana. And when I finished that, I threw the single on, and it like threw me into a montage. Like it felt like I was in a van with you, just kind of like cruising down I-70, and gave me that like deep-seated nostalgia that I have for the Midwest and those moments. And it was thought-provoking and kind of like where your thought process is on that. And it kind of led me to wanted to ask you, like, I know that nostalgia isn't just a symptom of growing up in the Midwest, but it is something that like comes back to for like me and my friends and those that are in the art community here with me. But like, where does nostalgia sit for you in sobriety? And where does nostalgia sit for you when it comes to writing? How do you tap into it, or when do you avoid it?
that's an interesting question. I think I've been thinking a lot about nostalgia recently, like very specifically, sort of provoked by this kind of wave of like festivals that are the entire lineup is it's just a pure nostalgia kind of fest. And I have sort of mixed feelings about all of that. I feel like you mentioned you had read the essays, and one of them's kind of about this, but I do feel like I talk to a lot of friends who are my age, and I feel that they're constantly kind of unable to find new music that they're interested in. And also they are interested in like these festivals that just have bands from 20 years ago. And I think that, for music, it can be a little frustrating to me, because I think like referencing old sounds is always cool, and doing interpretations of kind of older aesthetics but in a more modern sonic format is like one of my favorite things you can do in music and production. But then I think you can be sort of overly fixated on an era and start imagining it to be something it wasn't. And I think that's like a dangerous feature of nostalgia at all times, but especially as the digital world is kind of going through this sea change moment and realigning itself. Platforms are kind of like Pangeaing right now into some sort of new internet architecture, and And I think more than ever, we got to protect our ability to like find new art also. So I have pretty strong feelings about nostalgia in terms of like music. Um, I think in terms of my sobriety, it is something that I'm like always thinking about, and it's a constant process of reminding myself that like I am a very romantic, like rose-colored glasses uh, person in that regard. I think we may have talked about this a couple years ago, just very briefly, but um, I didn't, in my drinking days, I didn't really have like what you might call like a traditional bottom at any point. It was more like a very long, low valley, but I didn't. There was no sort of moment where anybody like sat me down and said this has to stop. And I think because of that, and because I made the choice myself, and it can be kind of easy when that's the case to look back and really like miss the things you chose to walk away from. Um, and just knowing that like, I knew it had to happen. I felt it had to happen for a long time, but the further you get away from that, it can be kind of extra romantic. Those sort of those nostalgic memories, they feel like extra free. Um, but that is chemical wizardry, right? That's like it's equally as easy for me to remember like being hungover for 10 years straight, but it's less fun, so I don't reflect on that as much. I think there was one thing that kind of like blew my mind that I heard on a podcast maybe a year or so ago. It was the actress Natasha Lyonne. She was on Dax Shepard's podcast, and I look up to like a lot of sort of famous folks who are like sober and talk about it a lot. Anthony Bourdain is like my number one. He was huge to me, and he was always like, when I was still drinking, he was always this kind of mythical character because he had, kicked heroin cold turkey, but still could have a beer with Obama. And I was just like, man, that's what's up. I'm like him. I can just keep drinking no matter how obvious it becomes that I can't. And when he passed, that was like a real like wake up moment for me. And that's kind of when I refocused on these different more positive kind of celebrities, I guess. Like I like that interview format. I've always enjoyed, that type of podcast. And so like listening to Dax Shepard and all these people who have been sober for like, 15, 20 years talk about it. It was really encouraging for a couple years because it was very like, you hear about people who like are getting up super early and are going on like really long runs and are doing cold plunges and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, like these are my people now. And I think I always felt like a little fraudulent in that because like I am nostalgic for it. I miss it, and I feel better for sure, but like I don't have a newfound like lust for life. Like that was always there. That was always still there. And when Natasha Lyonne was on Dax Shepard's podcast, I've heard him talk about his relapse like 200 times. Mm-hmm. And everybody is always like, they always have a lot to say about it. They're always, really like complimentary about how open he's been about it. Natasha Lyonne, the second that she found out he relapsed, she said, "Was it fun?" And that just like opened up my whole world, because then she proceeded to talk about kind of being like a bit of a sober scumbag and being like not able to relate to all these new lifestyle choices that people tend to make, and just saying like, I'm the exact same person as I was. I'm still kind of nuts. I just don't do this anymore, and it's for the best. And that, I think, has opened my mind up to the fact that, like, sure, I can be nostalgia for those days, but like it's also appropriate to like mourn them. It was a great time. It was a lot of fun, and a lot of it was very positive, and I miss that. Ultimately, I'm glad it's gone. Ultimately, I'm glad to be where I am now, but it's still always a process. And like, I think a lot of people there, maybe it's something that you start to feel when you get like, 10, 15, 20 years away from it. But I felt like affirmed by her in a way. Like, I don't know. I just felt like this is somebody I'm hearing from who is kind of like me and is also sticking with it and is successful. Like, you don't have to be like drinking green juice all day long to like make this work and be happy,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I totally, I get that. And I had a big kind of like change of heart in the way that I was thinking about it and the way that I would look back. And I would think about those days of really great times and, having fun with friends. And then it was almost like I was trying to muddy my own memory of it. Like I wasn't deserving of that fun because of what I was doing during it. And like blaming alcohol, but it was still me. I still advanced my career. I still had good relationships. I was shitty in moments, but overall I was still can look back and say you were a good person. You still are. And I think like with sobriety, I started looking at it as like, okay, I closed that door and then I have to start anew in a lot of ways. And when I was thinking about it like that, I was just like, that makes it so much more difficult because I don't know where to start from. Like, I don't know what version of myself that I am like rebuilding from. And, it's easy to start kind of like filling in with wanting to do green juices and doing all that healthy shit. And like that stuff can come in. Yes. But I had to start looking at it as I didn't cast a version of myself away necessarily as much as I pulled the healthy part through. And that was the part that I needed to like dust off and nurture. And it took some time to realize that it was just like a broken version of me that had to work on some things and not totally rebuilding the self itself, And it like made it easier to look back and just say like, yeah, I was drinking and I did have fun, but I recognized that it was something that I had to cut off and pull myself out of it. And I do like being scummy and fun. And you referenced something like, earlier in the conversation about like being in the groups on tour. Like I'm the same way. Like my rev up time is just longer than it used to be, but I still get there. Like I'm not necessarily like fully different. Like I'm still fun and funny and I can interact in the same way, but there's never any like downturn the way that there used to be. I'm just like up and then I'm out when it's time to get out. And that's something that I've like really come to appreciate.
Yeah, it's nice to like be able to predictably always be like awake exactly as long as everybody else is still interesting, and then being able to shut it down whenever you want. And it's crazy. Like but yeah, I think if I like you work in the industry, right? You're a
I'm adjacent now, but when I first got sober, I was still like beverage director and working within bars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was something like having. I worked in the service industry for like a decade before getting sober, and then, as you'll hear from like many musicians, that's like a real seamless like back and forth. And I think that a big question for me like is will I maintain those relationships post getting sober, because like with all my music friends we still have this connective tissue. We can still play music together and write music together, and that is not going anywhere. If anything, that has been kind of underscored and like is more doable than it's ever been. But it's been cool to see. Like I feel lucky that I can be around alcohol still, because like I like to go out. Like I want to hang until late with the homies, you know. And I definitely it's always uncomfortable when like other people start like editing their behavior a ton around you. Like I do appreciate it. I appreciate everyone looking out, but like, you know, if you've got a good handle on your drinking, I absolutely am pro drinking. Like super fun. No one knows that more than me.
Yeah, definitely. I know how that goes. And especially like, you know, music industry and restaurant industry go hand in hand. Like, you know, they're both like debaucherous spaces, and you could really burn out very easily in both of them. I kind of thought that I would have to leave the restaurant industry, not because I would feel tempted of like being surrounded by alcohol, but because I was worried that like nobody would take me seriously. Did you ever have that feeling like within music? I mean, especially looking up to folks like Hemingway and Bukowski, you know, one of my biggest, guys, somebody who inspires me is like Jack Kerouac. So like, you know, I felt like when I write and the way that I kind of like look at life, I was like, well, I have to do as he did, you know, I've got to kind of like put myself in the gutter or else I won't truly understand life. Like, did you ever have that sense of being in the music industry of just like, am I faking this lifestyle in any way?
I think I think I don't think so, but it is an interesting thing, like going back to your question earlier about like has it impacted the creativity at all? I think that through the music that like has been released thus far, you know, I have felt like that's all a very like accurate representation of like who I was, therefore continuing forward. And like because that Caracara record is really about like getting sober and like reaching that inflection point. I felt that being post that like is something that like we're minimally all aware of, you know, like if you're into that band, then like there's a good chance that like we can relate on that level, that like that you understand that that's what I'm talking about, and that that's like an authentic version of me. Like what did become a little weird, and I've definitely talked to folks about this like in other bands like related to people, because it's interesting when you write a record about like the darkest period of your life, and then you make a bunch of positive changes and like most of them work pretty well, and then a couple years later you're playing like we play these songs that I wrote at the like literal darkest moments of my life. And I've had so many conversations with like homies and fans and stuff after shows who will say things like, you know, this record helped me get sober 6 months ago. And I just always really want to have a reverence for that and be respectful to all the people who are having their own experience with it. And I try and be careful because like I've got a lot of time under my belt, meaning I've got a lot of like dopamine and serotonin coursing through my veins, and I'm up there having a good time with my best friends. And it's something we've talked about in the band. Like we just have a lot of fun now, and we're like kind of silly guys, you know, and, just finding the balance between like being authentically ourselves and like showing people that like, yeah, you can feel a lot better, you know, you can do this sober and you can and have a great time with your friends, but also realizing like we are also imparting extremely like sad, emotional, aggressive music right now. And figuring out a way to embody that character also is interesting, which is part of why, like with the new music, part of why I'm enjoying like turning the vocals over to collaborators, and also why I'm enjoying just making like straight up dance music, because like I love what Caracara like has created. I love playing shows with that band and going on tour. And I also want to be doing music so many nights a year. I want to be doing fun music. I want to be dancing around, you know, and yeah, sort of a long-winded, swerving answer for you, but
No, I love that. I think that's great. Um, the article that I read was 2022, and you know, about 2 years of sobriety in between when you started like being more vocal about it. What changed? Was it a revelation of feelings, of emotions? Did you notice more, physical changes? Because I myself took some time to talk about my sobriety. I really think it took kind of like feeling and noticing what the gifts of it were before I started talking about it, because I kind of came to sobriety similarly. I didn't have a bottom. It was this kind of like long decision. And then going through it, I think I just had a lot of questions for myself. I didn't necessarily have a great vocabulary on how to talk about it, especially when, time that I quit, any revolving story around it was about somebody's rock bottom. So if my story didn't sound like theirs, I was like, what's the point of sharing mine? Did you notice like the gifts changing for you that made you want to become a little bit more vocal?
I think I was definitely like with friends and family and just like folks that I was around. I was pretty vocal about it like early on, like right away, because I did sort of know I would have to be. It was such a drinking was such a like integral pillar of my personality that like if I just started refusing around, like it would have been cause for concern if I didn't fly that flag first. um, so I was pretty vocal about it, like, and then again, like I had about, I don't know, like 6 or 8 weeks to be vocal about it before before everything shut down for COVID, and then I really think that I just sort of waited because I didn't really have a platform to speak about it online in any meaningful way. And I was just at the apartment with my now wife, and we had a roommate at the time, which was crazy. But it was just such a like an isolated time, and like during that time, I feel like I really just focused on like learning a lot of the things about making music that I had never learned over the years, because I always had like a super talented friend who could do that already. So there was a lot of holes in my sort of technical approach to music, and then I think when things started to open up a little more in 2022, I felt a little more comfortable calling myself sober, I guess. I think earlier on too, I was just, I never went to AA. I employed a lot of the tenets because they're talked about constantly on a podcast I like, but I just felt, I don't know, I felt like I still kind of feel imposter syndrome when I'm talking about this sometimes. And I think like it's weird that we get validated by these external things, right? For better or for worse, It's like for some reason it's not enough for me that I did illegal stuff all the time, but like if I would have gotten arrested for it, then somehow that would have affirmed it in some way, But I just definitely can feel like imposter syndrome still, even with like over 5 years. And at the time, that definitely would have been like, I would have felt like, well, who am I to, try and broadcast that I know anything, And now, just with 5 years, one of the reasons I feel so much more comfortable talking about it is because I've had hundreds of conversations with close friends and complete strangers and everyone along the spectrum. And it's just been a real like crash course in like everybody thinks about this stuff. Many more people are stressing about it harder than you might think. And like just being even a little vocal about your own experience with it gives people the most amazing like permission, if you're willing to like meet them there and like talk to them about it. Like you can connect with people so deeply. I've had such incredible conversations like at shows with people who come up to buy a t-shirt, who I'm just able to like meet them in this like more vulnerable space because they're telling me like, oh, I'm, you know, I have this many days, um and I'm wondering, you know, I play in a band, is this going to be fun or is this going to be a bummer? Like it's weird to go to shows now. And I'm like, yeah, it's definitely going to feel weird to go to shows for a while, cuz like, you know, for if your drinking was anything like mine, like shows were the absolute pinnacle. Like absolutely, let's drink and play shows. And I think that's like a been true of rock and roll since day one, you know. It's going to be different for sure, but like you have all these conversations where like I can like honestly say like it you know, it's going to be different, and I can't guarantee it'll exactly be better, but it still rules, and like it's an awesome way to spend your time, and the more comfortable you get, the better it'll be. Like I felt like maybe I shouldn't be talking about it because I didn't have like a green juice cold plunge answer, you know. Like yes, it's always going to be amazing. You're never going to feel anxiety about being in a crowd again. You're never going to feel anxiety about, I wish I could say all that, but like for me, no, like you absolutely are. But there's a good chance you'll develop a bunch of tools that you're not going to develop if you keep getting wasted.
Yeah. Yeah. All those things that I was afraid of and just kind of like pushing to the wayside with alcohol, like they still suck and they still follow you, but it becomes so much easier to deal with them because when I was drinking, I turned them into like, you know, boogeymen, and they were like huge and terrifying. And it's one of those things that like you turn on the light and it's just like, you know, the hallway light shining your sock on the side of the wall, making it look like a lot more scary than it actually is. I hesitated to call myself sober for a while too because of the stigma around it. You know, I stopped drinking in 2017, and the reasons why people quit weren't as like fully health focused in the conversations yet. It was still DUIs, it was still wrecking your car, it was still pregnant were the top reasons why people would stop drinking, and a lot of people didn't want to talk about it if, you know, they were taking a night off because somebody would assume those things. It's crazy now to look back and think that I would be more okay being called a drunk than I would be being called sober.
Yeah, I relate to that a lot, and I'm very impressed by anybody who managed to get sober like pre-pandemic. I think that like one of the things I've experienced, like having only been sober in like a post-pandemic nightlife world, is like I feel like everyone, whether or not it was related to consumption, I feel like everyone has kind of re-examined their relationship with like going out. And when nowadays, when you come to say like a conversation at a dinner or something with the information that like following 2020, you no longer party, you know, I think that that is a much like less weighted thing. And there are so many products available, like every bar, like the dive bar on my street, like the old school Chicago dive bar has like a mocktail menu. I know that even just a short few years ago, like I was already having thoughts about like wanting to stop in 2017, but I saw no version. I saw no like way out. You know, I was still living in Philly, still like deep in the service industry, and the culture that I was involved in. Like, I knew some people who didn't drink, but I nowhere near like the amount of discussion happening with, you know, just nowhere near the amount of resources that seem to be available nowadays. So kudos on that. That's hardcore.
Yeah, it feels pretty good. It was because, yeah, you're right. Like the landscape then, it was like I'll have an O'Doul's or nothing, you know. And even like some of the bigger parties that I would go to, especially like industry focused ones, are like, oh yeah, we got you. water in the back. Go stand by the bathrooms with that like orange cooler thing. Let's on top of a trash can. You're like, nice. Especially coming from hospitality. You're like, why take care of everybody? Like, why not me? And, you know, even the dive bars are throwing the mocktail menus on there. It's like, why not? Why wouldn't you have options? You know, we want people to come out, give them something. What do you drink on tour?
Um, it's funny. I like in stopping drinking. I have had a big a big like one sort of thing like that. I think a lot of drinkers a thing that it was very available, especially maybe like 10 years ago through like 2020ish is like you could if you got into craft beer enough, you could still totally be an alcoholic, but it was like a lifestyle instead of a concerning behavior.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
collecting them all.
yeah, and so for that reason, I was like always this crazy into IPAs, like super into all the citrusy IPAs. Those were my favorite, and one of my favorite things like that I didn't think that I was lying to myself for all those years, you know? But one of my favorite little like bits of freedom that like getting away from the alcohol of it all has given me is that like Diet Coke with lime is really what I want, to be
Yeah.
100% honest. Like I Athletic Brewing, shout out. Like I love like all the awesome like the hop waters and all the cool stuff people are making. It's all cool. But at the end of the day, what I'm looking for is a Diet Coke and lime, and like it felt like a revelation when I realized that, because it's always cheaper than the other stuff too, and it's like genuinely what I'm looking to get. So yeah, I'm ripping Diet Cokes on tour like you wouldn't believe, and that was like a silly thing in my early 20s. I probably wouldn't have done that because I would have been like, oh, this aspartame is gonna get you.
Yeah.
Just just take a shot before you leave the bar and then drive home, you know. And now
Yeah.
it's like, I'll roll the dice on the aspartame, thanks.
Yeah. It's also a little easier to sit with now that I don't have 100 of something a night.
Yeah, it's nice to want one beer and have one beer, and
Hmm.
then not need to continue having beers. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely enjoy the occasional NA beer, but yeah, it's and okay, so like this the one thing I can be honest about is I think this is a very typical this is a pathway that a lot of sober folks in the service industry certainly take. It was a very brief amount of time that it took me to make my way into coffee, and now I am a psycho pretentious monster about coffee. So I've just redirected the laser beam to a much more positive beverage,
Yeah.
but my beverage obsession is still alive and well. It's just it's morning focused, you know.
Yeah. I took the exact same path.
Yeah, that was I call it kind of for myself. I call it COVID coffee college. But when we couldn't go on tour, I my wife and I were living in Monterey, California, and I was just like producing electronic music in the garage and trying to figure out like when Caracara was going to get the record out, going to be back on tour. I was thinking like, oh, 6 months, and I got this job at this company called Captain and Stoker. It's just a really cool like third wave spot. They roasted their own stuff, um, and yeah, I'm a very I get very fixated. I go all out on whatever I do, um, and that's why it's like been very positive for me to get alcohol out of the mix, because that was the case for that too. Um, but like in the absence of being able to play shows and play music with my friends, I just like committed 5,000% to that coffee job, and and it was a super rewarding 3-year run. Like, I'm still close friends with the owner out there. My cold brew recipe is canned now. It's available at the Monterey Aquarium, which is pretty awesome. And I don't live out there anymore, but I feel like I was able to like leave a stamp on the scene, and the level of focus I was able to bring to that job with an added level of like professionalism and like showing up that was not available to me prior to getting sober was like a super rewarding experience. And I don't work in it anymore, and it also helped me to learn that like music is what I'm gonna have to do, because whether it pays me or not, it's what I'm thinking about all day long anyway. So I need to build a system that can kind of make that the job, if at all possible. But working that job and just working with cool people and supportive people and people I could talk about booze with, like my boss Tyler became one of my closest friends out there. My coworker, also named Will, we talked about sobriety constantly. We would always have really good, vulnerable, open conversations, but like that showed me that those conversations could happen around like coffee in the daytime. Like that was possible too. And so I'm grateful to that beverage, but boy, am I hooked on it, let me tell you.
Yeah, I mean, coffee's a great substitute for that. I mean, especially, I worked in craft cocktail bars, and, as much as I loved drinking, I loved the storytelling element of like crafting beverage more. I would love having people over and like picking something off my shelf and like, this is single batch, or this came from this area, or, this guy distilled this in his backyard and it's out of this like old Aquafina bottle, and all of these like little facts and stuff like that. And for a long time, like that was missing in the NA space, but it was easily like replaceable with coffee, because like, where's this coming from? Like who's responsible for it? Like what's the terroir like? What's the weather? All of these like little intricate facts that I just loved about booze. Like now I can talk about that with coffee, and there seems to be like, infinite bags that I could like pull from and play with and nerd out on like co-fermented with peach or whatever wacky stuff like people are doing. It's still there. And like that's what I've been pining for in like the NA space, and it's like slowly getting there because there are really great people making incredible products that have like faces behind it and like stories, instead of just like reaching on a shelf and saying, well, this is a whiskey alternative. There's like not that much excitement behind that, but I love like where the flavor profiles and stuff of some of the NA space are going. So it's cool to have that in coffee, and then slowly growing within like the NA space as well.
Yeah, I that's awesome you say that about coffee. Like I was immediately attracted over to like the roasting and production side, and ultimately like my final gig within the company was like I was doing all the green buying and like managing the warehouse, and it was so rewarding to like talk to the people at the sources and all the spots along the supply chain. First supply chain job in COVID, that was a real doozy, and I might not do exactly that again, but yeah, we worked on this one particular experimental Guatemalan lot that was like a 36-hour pineapple yeast ferment. Ooh, unreal. But yeah, I think that part of what I like about coffee, and a good friend of mine who I did like the bulk of my drinking with back in the day, my bandmate in Steady Hands and our former band Vicky Speedboat, my friend Sean, he's gotten super into tiki over the last like 10 years. And I love particularly like going out with him. He has a tiki bar at his house, but also just like going to a tiki bar with him, because I feel like this is what you're saying is like, as a non-drinker, like make me a sick drink. We don't need to like mimic, an old fashioned or whatever. Like I'm glad you could offer that for the people who want to. That's cool. But like so much more than like substitute spirits, I'm just interested like let's have a crazy experience like with a beverage,
Yeah.
And I think that it was super fun to just go into coffee and to taste all that super like nuanced differences. And I love travel. I love like thinking about different places, and it's so once you really dig into what you're saying, like the terroir and like why a Kenyan coffee tastes completely different than a Costa Rican coffee. I found I was really able to like get so much out of learning all that. And yeah, I've been looking for that, I guess, in the mocktail space. Like I feel like there's one spot in Chicago. It's called Daisy's. It's an unbelievable restaurant. Highly recommend. They have a vehicle that you see around town. Like it's clearly just like they have like a bakery. It's like their back of house like vehicle or whatever. But they have the license plate Nudes with two O's, and they have handmade noodles. So I just want to shout them out because I think
Is
that's
that
the
in
best.
Logan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there.
Awesome. I love the NA menu at that place so much because like they have like fresh squeezed juice early in the day, and but they also have like a full bar with some fake spirits and stuff, but then they also have like all these fresh ingredients, and like the NA menu there is just like the best drinks.
Yeah.
It's there's some mocktails, there's some like juices, there's some sort of house made sodas, but it's just like whatever you get, like cool drinks. I just want cool drinks.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought them up because they did a really great job when I was there. They allowed me to kind of like, when I go out, I want to experience. I want to buy stuff. I'm not going out just to like sit in a chair with like a glass of water. Like if you've got it, I'm gonna buy it the same way that I did when I was drinking. I just want to try stuff. And I started off with a glass of like sparkling NA wine with them when the entrees came out. Like I tried two different NA cocktails that I really enjoyed, and then I finished with some like wacky soda that they had. Like the weirder the better when it comes to that. Like I just want good beverage. I think especially since I have like a bartending background, like I don't want a literal diluted version of what I used to drink as a drinking person, especially when my career was to find the best of these things. And if you just give me like if you tell me this is an alternative, then I'm going to judge it as its like foolproof counterpart. And you're never going to score well against that. And like the brands that are like really doing it for me are the folks that are like digging into the fact that this is the Wild West. And you're just like, this is a flavor profile that I'm like stoked on, and I want to bring this to people. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny you say that. Like, I it took me a while to figure out like what was going on here, but like I agree. Sometimes I just want to like buy drinks, buy stuff, you know. And one thing I would like definitely recommend to anyone who is like newly sober is like get an app that tracks your days, because it's cool to know how long you've been successful at this, but also one that asks you how much you think you spend per day on alcohol, because like that piece of data has made me like so fun at the bar, because I've saved like 20 grand in the last, so
That's
I'm
a lot.
always, yeah, it's crazy. I didn't have 20 extra grand. It's good I did that. But like having that information, like really kind of freed me up to be like, no, like when I'm out, I still want to participate. I still want to be like going up to the bar. Like when it's my turn to get around, I don't want everybody to feel all weird about me buying them a $6 drink when I'm getting a $4 drink. Like it's cool. Ultimately I saved so much more money than you could ever imagine. Let me get these drinks for the table. And like those moments of just like participation in the community of it all, I feel lucky to be able to still have those. But that took me a while to remember, because for that first year of like being out at the bar on tour and stuff, I feel like I was like really Spartan about all of it. I was just like, let me get a seltzer. I'm just gonna nurse like one sparkling water for 4 hours and just kind of like look at you guys,
Yeah.
and it's fun to like just engage in the thing everyone's doing.
Yeah, 100%.
I had
Well,
actually one specific memory from this bar in Brooklyn on tour. Like Carlos from Caracara got like involved with this pool shark, and like was in this like super heated pool game, and Carlos ended up beating him and like taking over the table, and the guy was like super cool about it but was super impressed, and was like this old like drunk Brooklyn guy, and he had talked to Carlos and figured out we were in a band, and so when he found that out and when Carlos beat him, he was like, I'm buying the whole band shots. And when I was like, oh yeah, no, sorry, the bartender was like, I got you, and he poured me just a shot of the most bitter, sour, but like fresh grapefruit juice.
Oh, nice.
And it was like one of the most fun shots I've ever had, because like it hurt. It was super, it blasted me, and like was also tasty and refreshing, and like it was nice to just have that, like, I don't know, that weird like shared moment of like the action, but not only the action, like the bitterness and it's all still there. Like the fun is all still there to be had. It's just you can take out the one ingredient. It's not the end of the world. And yeah, but that was just some bartender who was like, I have this for cocktails. It's kind of like a shot, I guess, here. And I was like, this is cool. Like I would pay for this.
Yeah, I love that. I love that celebratory sort of like shot moment. I'll like go to orchards when I can, and if they have like apple cider vinegar, I'll get different ones of that, and I'll just like do shots of that at home sometimes, because it makes me feel like I'm taking care of myself, but it also hurts in the same way that, like, you know, doing a shot of whiskey or something used to feel.
Yeah, it's funny when you get away from it and you still, like, we're talking about nostalgia and everything. You're nostalgic for these very granular parts. I feel like the more time of sobriety I have, it gets funnier and funnier, like the things you miss about it, because they really are, you know, almost every part of it is possible and ultimately like easy to recreate in some other like parallel way. But like with time, you start to see the granularity of the obsession and all the silly little rituals and all the just cultural extra that is attached to it. And it's like, yeah, I can really still have this in a lot of ways. You know, I can create a semblance of so much of this in a way that is still rewarding and feels engaging, but also allows me to be a human being in a way that felt inaccessible for some reason for so long.
Yeah, it's good to have our cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Well, what do you love about yourself?
I think something that I have like really like learned to love about myself in the past, even just like year or so, is, so I when we moved to Chicago, I like got health insurance and went to the doctor for the first time in like way too long, and I've sort of known this forever, but I was finally able to get diagnosed with ADHD, which it was really sort of helpful to get that diagnosis and then to start reading up on like the very different manifestations of that, because like I always kind of, I never sought that out because I didn't I don't fit like a normal definition of what that looks like, because I do have, I would say, almost an unbelievable level of hyper focus available to me if I'm interested in something, but like the stuff that I have to do to just live feels like completely impossible. And I'm also like almost intrusively good at pattern recognition, and I think that for the past 10 years that has had like some friction in a lot of my relationships, just because I feel like I've seen, not to take this in a political direction, but I've seen things moving in a direction generally a little earlier than people in my life, and I'm I have an old lyric about it. I've become too apocalyptic for my friends to want me around. But I've sort of learned over the last couple years that like that pessimism was like realism in a lot of contexts, and it was divorced from emotion for me in a way that it isn't for people in my life. And I wasn't always like sensitive to that. It's not that people can't see things happening. It's more that like I have a comfort with just calling things exactly as I see them, and I get hyper fixated. And when I do something, I want to learn like everything about it, and I want to go all the way in. And I think I've learned to like love that about myself in the last couple years, as I've been able to see it clearly, and as I've been able to gain some control over it. Because I think unacknowledged and uncontrolled, it's the reason why I wanted to become the best at drinking. It's the reason why like my like I mentioned earlier, like I have like the absolute best list of troubled male role models that I like look up to in the arts, and like musicians and writers and stuff. And I aimed my laser beam at that, at becoming that, without aiming it also at all the work necessary, you know? Like I'm fascinated by like Hunter S. Thompson, because he has this reputation as being this crazy party animal all the time, which is accurate, but also had the most psychotic work ethic of all time, and was able to churn out infinite volume of work while also doing all this crazy partying. Like, it's really easy to only do the partying and convince yourself that you're going to start writing any day now, or you're going to make that record or whatever. Just learning about myself that like if maybe some people are that, but I'm not that. I have laser focus, tunnel vision, and the world, I can tune out the world and make music and make videos and write essays in a way that I understand like many people can't. And I just have to really protect that, because it's like my it's the fuel in the tank for all my like most aggressive demons, I think. But like when used with responsibility, I think I can make some pretty cool stuff. And I think it's a unique thing about me. Like when I think back to like my earliest memories of like doing creative projects, I just think about like a level of resolve, a level of follow through, like a level of commitment that I think can be hard for some people to summon. And it like borders on obsession for sure. Like when I care about something, I can work on it for 18 hours straight. Absolutely no problem. And learning to be really grateful for that has been cool. It's been freeing, you know?
Yeah, that's exciting. How can people follow along with the work you're doing? How can they find you?
Yeah, so Buying Fireworks in Indiana is what the project is called. If you go to buyingfire.works, you'll be able to find my newsletter, my hub, everything, the links to everywhere else. But the music will be everywhere that people want to consume their music. Spotify, Apple Music, and Buying Fireworks is the handle on every conceivable platform. I'm still working out what my presence on certain platforms is going to look like in this new era of platforms. But yeah, I'm really loving building out this new approach. I feel like I'm finding ways to prioritize the platforms that I really value as a consumer. You know, I really like long form stuff. Like I said about my ability to fixate, like when I love an artist, I want to go as deep as I can with them and their work. And I just want to provide that to the smaller group of people who wants it. You know, I'm not looking for a billion streams. I would so much rather like meet 300 dorks like me who want to talk about distorted guitars over drum machines. Like, if there's only 300 of us, I want to meet all of you, and you can find me at buyingfired.works.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward, Will. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh.